Shalom Aleichem Internet. Today is the 19th of October, Gimel B'Cheshvan. My name is Sender Geisinsky, flooding you with this week's TorahByte. So the second parsha of the Torah is referred to as Parashat Noach, named after Noah, who is the primary character of this week's Torah portion. Obviously, in the Torah portion we have Noah building the ark, sailing away on it with the animals as the world is flooded and destroyed, and then Noah comes out after he sees the dove with the olive branch, builds an ark, builds an altar to God. God shows the rainbow, a covenant that the world will never be flooded again. And eventually the parsha ends with the birth of Avraham. But let's go back to the beginning of the parsha, in which we find that the Torah decides to describe Noach, and says, Noach ish tzadik tamim haya b'darotav, which translates as, Noah was a righteous man, perfect in his generation. Now, the Torah, which doesn't waste a single letter, let alone a word, went out of its way to tell us that he was perfect in his generation, which leads the commentaries, obviously, to try and understand the message in that qualifier, in his generation. Rashi brings a famous discussion on this, one side saying that this actual word is going to show how great of a person Noach was, that he managed to be righteous and perfect despite being in the most corrupt generation that ever existed. So this word is going out of its way to say how great he is. The other side, as is typical of a Jewish argument, takes the complete opposite approach, which is that this extra word is here to not talk about how great Noach is, but to kind of tamp down on that and to speak a little bit more detrimental and to say he was good and righteous and perfect compared to his generation. However, were he to be in the generation of Avraham, he would be relatively insignificant. Now, the Torah puts a tremendous premium on speaking positively about somebody. Not only about people, even about animals, as we find later in the parsha, when the Torah describes the animals that are pure, it says, ha-behemot, ha-tehorot, which means the pure animals. Now, there's a word for the opposite in Hebrew, and it's tameot, tameh. And the Torah, if it was looking to use as little words as possible, as the Torah does, would say ha-behemot, ha-tameot, to describe the other class of animals, but it doesn't say that. It actually uses extra words to say ha-behemot asher einanu tahora, the animals that are not pure. Why? Because the Torah will go out of its way to speak positively. And from that we learn, as the Talmud says, that one has to go out of their way to speak positively about everybody or anything. And yet, going back to Noach, according to the second opinion, we find that we're doing the exact opposite. That the Torah goes out of its way to add the word b'dorotav in his generation to actually add a little bit of a negative element to say that while he's good and righteous, but it was only compared to his generation. Why would the Torah have to do that? Why couldn't the Torah just leave it that he was righteous? And that's it. The answer lies in the difference between Noach and Avraham, which is the one that we compare him to. Each one of them was told about the eventual destruction of a group of people. Noah was told, go build an ark because I'm going to destroy the entire world because of their corruption. And Avram was told about the destruction of the 5 cities comprised in Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, the reaction to it couldn't have been more different. Noah follows the word of God to the T. He goes and he builds the ark, he brings in the animals, and then sails away and leaves the world to its destruction. Avraham takes a different approach. Avram, as soon as he hears that God's plan is to destroy 5 cities, goes and gets in God's face, begs, demands, challenges God to reconsider. And so the commentary here is coming to tell you that what the Parsha is saying with the word b'dorotav is not that Noah was a bad man or wasn't so great. It's that his approach compared to Abraham's was not really the one that we're looking for. We'd rather that you go out and seek and beseech on behalf of your fellow man. But the truth is, just to speak to Noah's favor, if you look at carefully at how the commentary words it, he doesn't say that were he to be standing next to Abraham, then he would be insignificant. Rather, were he to be in the generation of Abraham, then he would be considered insignificant. Because, you see, what Noah did was still perfect. Tamim haya. But perfect bidorotav, in his generation. You see, Noah lived in a very different generation than ever existed after him. He lived in a generation where there was no other hope but for a complete reset. There was no chance of saving that generation, because if there was, God would never have brought the flood. We see this simply in the fact that Noah's building the ark for 120 years. And when people would ask him, what are you doing? I'm building an ark. Why are you building an ark? Because God's going to destroy the world because you're so corrupt. How many people took his message to heart and repented? How many people came into the ark with him, besides for his immediate family? The answer is 0. Not one. Now I want to tell you something. If you were to put on a shower curtain and parade around Central Park, give it long enough, you'll have some sort of following. You'll have a group of people that their minds are registered in that way that they'll follow you. We see all these internet stuff and things that people do and somehow amass a following. Sometimes it's big, sometimes it's small. But Noach is speaking 120 years telling people that the world's going to be destroyed. And not one person. This just goes to show that it was a different time. It was a different generation. And the recourse was just to, in a sense, let it happen. But God vowed after the flood that there will never ever be a generation like that. There will never be a generation that is beyond hope. And so that the point of the Parsha, or the message, is that while what Noah did was important and perfect, but it was only right in his generation. And since the destruction, the floods, us in our post-flood era, never should take Noah's approach, because there is never no hope. Rather, the one we learn from is Abraham, who, even though he was discussing a corrupt people, sought and to find anything that can turn around and avert the decree, save these people. Because that's the type of generations we live in nowadays, where no matter how bad things seem to be, there's always a little bit of hope somewhere. And that's the message and the idea to each one of us. Righteousness, and the way it's measured according to Torah, is not only whether you're doing all right. That was for Noach's generation. But past that, the way you measure righteousness or goodness of self is how much you're also involved in helping others, and advocating for others, and beseeching for others. And so it's time to take stock of ourselves and see how much is it that I am making sure that the world around me is also something I can be proud of, not just myself. With that, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, and see you next week for the next installment of TorahByte.